So this one is from Carol. He says, "Hi Paolo, I've been on TRT for 5 years and don't really feel benefit from it. I started my TRT on Sustanon 250 every 2 weeks and I felt like a young god. My libido was great, erections great, strength, mentally I felt great. But unfortunately that state didn't last long, 4 weeks. After a few weeks they put me on Nebido every 8 weeks, but I don't really feel benefit from it. I have no libido, weak erections, feel depressed, and it's going on for years. I've noticed that my prolactin level is usually high, not hyper high. He says mine is 560, and I think he gave a range of 70 to 410. Maybe you can discuss that. But he says, do you think, but doctors always disregard that. He says, do you think that could be a reason, the elevated prolactin? And why I felt great when I started therapy 5 years ago, but now I feel no benefits now. And he says, I live in the UK, by the way, thanks in advance for your help. So it's quite a bit going on there, but I think the gist is the elevated prolactin. He's worried about that.
I mean, as medical case managers, Sam and I, we've seen lots of different blood tests, under the supervision of the doctor, and we can see lots of them. For many people, for different reasons, when they first start TRT, you do feel really good. You're in this honeymoon stage. And then after a while, sometimes things plateau and they don't always feel as good because that initial surge of testosterone, they get an initial surge of dopamine. What you tend to see happen is in some men, the testosterone itself will make the lactotrophs in the brain, the parts that release prolactin, elevate. Other men, they might have hypothyroidism, which makes them more susceptible to the release of higher prolactin levels. Other men may have been treated or are currently on SSRI medications that make prolactin release more often than not. And the same thing with those who are on proton pump inhibitors. And there's so many other drugs that may also increase prolactin.
And what are the negative effects of it?
Well, prolactin is what women have to lactate.
Oh, okay.
When men have it, or when they have a tumor on the brain, a benign tumor, hyperprolactinemia, it basically lowers the sex drive completely. They usually have very, very low testosterone levels. Like we're talking like 3 or 4 nanomolar per liter, nearly that of a woman's. So it's just not a good picture. And there are some men, a lot, not a lot, but some men who are on TRT that will get these elevations in prolactin. Now the important thing is if it's consistently above like 3 or closer to the 3s, even on the morning fasting test that you do, that could be an issue of maybe a micropituitary adenoma, and it could also be a sign of just they tend to have more prolactin, which is then making them not feel as good.
So does that sort of negate the effect of the TRT, the positive effect?
Absolutely.
So in cases like that, do you think there's some other type of medication that the patient should take?
Yeah, so one thing they got to look at the dosage, and it may help if you can alter the dosage. If you're doing a full CC every week, that's a lot of testosterone blast at you.
Like within Nebido?
Well, Nebido is kind of consistently, can be high for a while and then drops down. The Sustanon, same thing. If you do the full ampule for most people, all in one go, and then wait 2 weeks, then you're going to have this, that's when you have the peaks and the troughs. You don't have it when you use half of the ampule more frequently, either every 4 or 5 days or even once a week. You don't usually see those. Any drug, you'll see a peak and a trough. I mean, that's just pharmacodynamics. Whether it's oral, whether it's oral thyroid medication, whether it's a cream, whether it's an injection of any medication. And the amount of ups and downs is called the area under the curve, and that shows the amount of medication one's getting over this period of time. But what I think, and I don't get another tangent, but when the peaks and troughs people are worried about, they're going to go too low. I think that's the fear when they talk about the instability. So with Sustanon, with any of the testosterone, they're actually quite stable at every 4 or 5 days, especially when you lower the dose, you're not getting as high of a peak. And then the trough, as long as you're catching it before it gets to that threshold where you never felt good, you're fine. But you mix in this high peak and you may get a high amount of prolactin as well. And some men just tend to get that. And having, there is a treatment, it's called cabergoline, or any dopamine agonist can help bring that down. The problem with other dopamine agonists outside of cabergoline is you take them every day, you feel very tired, very sluggish. They're used for Parkinson's patients. I think the indication for a drug called cabergoline is for people that have prolactinomas, but those people aren't at 500. Those people are at 1,000 or greater, not at 500, but there can still be some benefit for those who have levels at 500 for bringing it down a bit.
And are doctors in the TRT community using prolactin lowering drugs as a form of therapy, or is it sort of a supplement with TRT that goes?
It's a supplement with TRT. I think using it on its own never quite fixes the problem on its own. I mean, I think endocrinologists would tend to use cabergoline on its own initially for someone that has an intact pituitary. But once you're on TRT, there'll be no reason to pull them off the TRT and just use this particular drug. It's a drug that you would take a very small amount, a quarter to half of a tablet once or twice a week.
Yeah. So why is this guy who asked the question, why is his doctor not addressing his concerns? I think a lot of doctors aren't even looking at prolactin.
No, they don't. I mean, especially the NHS, they won't look at it normally unless they suspect a tumour, and they'll only look at it if the initial testosterone results came in very low, under 3 or 4. And then they'll test prolactin, and then they may do something about it. Because I think prolactin levels can be transient. If you're under a lot of stress and then you do the blood test, it might shoot up and then it might come back down. If after you ejaculate the level's up, it can go up quite a bit and then it should come back down. And the amount of time between when it's up and then goes back down, especially after ejaculation, is called your refractory period. Mm-hmm. So that makes a big difference. And some men have a longer refractory period than others. Others can go like bunnies between sessions, and others have to wait a long time between that. So it's very individual. Okay. But if it does create a problem, this particular drug has been studied in healthy young men, 23, 24, and they found that the average wait time, the refractory period between times that they would go would be about half an hour to an hour. Okay. Then they give them this medication, a slightly higher dose than you would normally treat, and they're going like every 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's not something that would be used often.
Yeah.
But it can be used.
So I mean, I understand the frustration of this guy because, he's got a doctor who's not aware of all these different areas that affect his TRT treatment. But again, it might be difficult for him to come to someone like you or a private, clinic where they do more personalized or customized solutions, but it's more, maybe more expensive. So it's frustrating. What do guys like this do? Should they talk to their doctor?
They can also endocrinologists, but there are very strict guidelines on what they're going to do at the NHS, and most likely unless it continues to climb, they probably won't consider it. Sometimes you have the postcode lottery, and your doctor at the NHS may be understanding and prescribe you with that drug. But
he must have had the prolactin test done because he's got a result. So at least he could try to talk to his doctor about it.
So hopefully you can get help for it and it comes down. Or you lower the dose and potentially that can bring it down as well.
The TRT dose.
Yeah, or sometimes you have to look at the level of estradiol you've got. Because that can also have a knock-on effect.
Yeah, he said initially he was on Sustanon and then he went to Nebido. So if he felt good on Sustanon, maybe he should try going back to that.
Or change the
dosage.
dosing regime.
Yeah. So I hope that helps.
Make a difference.